story.
Oh, yeah.
And
Okay.
Speed.
Well, Jeffrey, we've never met before, but we're sitting here chatting like magpies about Dallas and actors you know in Dallas and so forth. And of course, though, our audience certainly, they know you from the movies that you've been doing recently. Excuse me. Our audience knows you from the movies you've been doing recently. Let's start with Amadeus, because that's one of my favorite films of all time. Now, your role was?
I played Emperor Joseph II.
Yes. And then, excuse me, all of a sudden, I don't know where this came from. Okay. Then, more recently, you have the film Ferris Bueller.
Mm-hmm.
And you are the...
I play the Dean of Students, which I guess means principal, actually, in modern parlance, as opposed to ours, in a suburban Chicago high school, who is after Ferris Bueller.
Yes, you're kind of the heavy in that. Mm-hmm. Not kind of, but you are the
Definitely,
heavy.
Definitely, yes.
Yes, and a lot of people resented the fact that the school person was presented that way. Has that come to your attention?
Not really, no. Although it is something that's true of John Hughes's films, is that the adults usually are. They're seen through the eyes of the young protagonists and are kind of ridiculous. So I hope that I am ridiculous and still a convincing human being, given that the character is required to do this fairly obsessive and insane thing, pursue Ferris Bueller with such unrelenting lack of mercy.
Then Easy Money was yet a different role.
Mm-hmm. That was a goodly length of time before Amadeus.
Yes.
It was a movie with Rodney Dangerfield, and I played Clive Barlow, the nephew of a very wealthy lady who expires, and I expect to inherit all of her money, but instead it is put in trust for a year in favor of Rodney Dangerfield, only to be given to him if he succeeds in losing weight, stopping smoking, stopping his generally Rodney Dangerfield kind of ways, just reforming his character totally. And I naturally don't like that very much. I expect to get all this money and think he's not going to succeed, and when he does succeed, I try to help him along the path to ruin.
Well, at least, Jeffrey, you can't complain about being typecast.
No, I hope not.
You cannot complain about that. In this movie, you're playing a dual role. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about the Dark Overlord. Because, first of all, you had to undergo what looks to be
radical surgery.
Yes, yes, industrial strength makeup. Tell me about that.
While I was still making Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I had a couple of weeks off while we were in Chicago before we went to Los Angeles, and I flew to San Rafael, where we did casts of my face and body for 2 weeks. They used those then to prepare studies for what the Dark Overlord would look like, and it eventually wound up being 8 stages of makeup, which is actually, the makeup consisted of many layers of foam rubber individually glued on every day and then colored. It took 5 hours to do every day and a half an hour to remove.
Then there's this extraordinary voice that goes with him. Now, was that your voice?
Yes, it was. I am the Dark Overlord of the universe.
That doesn't quite it. I sort of haven't done it for a while, so. But it is my voice, yes, with a slight bit of enhancement every now and then.
Yes,
we
like
decided
a reverb
early.
or something.
We actually decided. We did tests before we started the movie, and decided, in order for it to not sound like Darth Vader and not sound mechanical, it would have to have the minimum amount of jiggling. So I certainly know where it is, but it's not all the way through. In fact, some of it is just straight production soundtrack.
Jeffrey, isn't that very difficult, though, on your vocal apparatus?
Actually, because of my good training, I actually didn't do myself any harm. But after a full day of doing it, it gets very tiring.
The Dark Overlord is a rather frightening creature, I would say. Now, if you had a little kid, 2, 3 years old, do you think he could handle that?
I remember when I saw The Wizard of Oz. It was a drive-in movie, and I was scared out of my mind, but I didn't want to leave. The Witch scared me terribly. Margaret Hamilton. I think probably the Dark Overlord's going to be scary to kids, but he's also funny. And I think that kids would recognize that too. Because I don't know if you realized it, but there's a lot of humor in the Dark Overlord.
Indeed.
He's a funny fellow.
Indeed. When you saw the movie completed with the effects and some of the things that come from your mouth and so forth, what was your reaction?
Well, the tongue was pretty disgusting. The special effects, the added optical effects, I thought were very good. Michael McAllister and all of the crew at ILM did an extremely good job with all of that. It's a very, very difficult, time-consuming task, and they did a very good job. It's high quality, very good stuff.
Well, they are the best, as we all know.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Jeffrey, this has been a brief visit, but I've enjoyed it very, very much. Thank you, and I hope one time you'll come back to Dallas and we'll have a chance to talk further.
Thank you, Bobbie.
Thanks. It's a very nice interview. Thank you.
Okay, tape's rolling. Hold for speed. Speed.
Jeffrey, if we may, let's go through some of your recent roles. Let's start with Easy Money. Now, the guy you played there, what was he like? Then we all remember you from Amadeus. Currently, you're in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and you're kind of a bad guy in that, aren't you? A heavy. Have you had any flack about, have you had any flack from educators who resent a teacher, an administrator being presented that way? Well, at least, Jeffrey, you cannot complain about being typecast, can you? You're playing a dual role in Howard the Duck. What was involved in this makeup of the Dark Overlord? What did you think when you saw the completed movie and you saw the special effects that were added, particularly the thing that comes out of your mouth? Do you think that some of the effects are too scary for little kids? And now I'll just give you reactions. Okay, thank you.
It's fascinating. It's just like